People who have been on a reality TV show like Hardcore Pawn or Pimp My Ride or Pawn Stars, how fake was it? My dad sued my mom and they both ended up on Judge Joe Brown because Judge Judy said no. My dad is a schmuck. He dodged child support payments for close to 8 years and didn't contact me or my sister during that time. When I was in middle school, he popped back up out of the blue and wanted to visit, but he lives in the Ozarks now and we live in New England. So he flies out for a couple of days and we visit, don't really get along, and he goes back home. A few months later, we get a letter from some producers in LA saying my dad called the number for Judge Judy and filed a lawsuit against my mom, demanding she reimburse him for the money he spent to visit us. It says Judge Judy turned it down, but they said they had a new show yet to air called Judge Joe Brown that they wanted my parents to appear on. If she said no, there was no legal jeopardy for her. Their show is for quote-unquote entertainment. It also said my mom could file a countersuit against my dad, so being super angry, she did for everything from school tuition to books to dentist bills to my sister's speech therapy, food, school supplies, clothes, and everything for 8 years. Came out to be like $150,000. Now the filming date is scheduled and it happens to fall on my first day of high school. My mom decides that's too important a day to miss, so I'm removed from the trip. They fly out, get put up in a free, nice hotel, free meal, spend a while in hair and makeup, then start filming. Within 3 minutes, the judge boots my sister from the room, says that a little girl doesn't need to see her parents argue in public. Good man. The judge listens to both my dad and my mom. My dad's reason for suing was that my mom lived too far away. Judge asks who decided to move to the Ozarks. Judge calls my dad a moron. Judge listens to my mom list off all the things my dad skated on. Judge says if he could, he'd give her every dime she asked for, but the limit is $5,000 and she's getting it all. Judge tells my dad he should be ashamed. My mom calls my dad a slacker on national television, crossing that one off her bucket list. Both she and my sister got a bonus $300 appearance fee and cards from a bunch of people who'd book extras and background for soap operas and stuff. Then they spent the next day at Universal Studios, the same day as the MTV Movie Awards, so they got to watch all the limos arrive and some of the red carpet for that. Then on the flight back, they ran into some soap opera actors from General Hospital, which is my mom's favorite. Good trip for her. All right, so one thing I appreciate about this story is how positive he is about his mom and sister's experience. There's no, I got removed from the trip and I should have been there, etc. It's just, that was super great for my mom. Props to this person. Story 2. When I was in university about 7 years ago, we got an email inviting us to take part in a 60-minute makeover in the UK. It's a show where a person's family calls in a team of experts to totally refurnish their house while they're away from home for the day. The audience at home are led to believe that all of the work is done within 60 minutes and they make a point to start their countdown on camera and rush everyone in to meet their deadline. About 10 of us joined the makeover team at around 8 a.m. on the day and were given flat-pack furniture to make outside the house before they started the makeover. The crew had a skip outside where they threw all of this poor, unsuspecting guy's furniture only to be replaced with this cheap stuff that was only available to him via sponsorship of the program. They list all of the new furniture's manufacturers in the credits at the end of the show. They also masked off all of the skirting boards and light switches ready for painting before we were let loose inside. We were led into the house as a member of the ITV crew declared the start of our 60 minutes. After 30 minutes of frantic, patchy wall painting, carrying lamps, uncomfortable seating, and chipboard coffee tables into the house, we were told to vacate. We then had lunch in the street while the experts went in to clean up our mess and then did it all again for another strict 30 minutes. After we were finished and the official 60 minutes were over, there was another period of professionals tidying and filling in our shoddy decorating before we all gathered outside and waited for a man to come home from work. He would find that all of his furniture had been smashed into a skip outside his house and replaced with stuff that may look good on camera for a couple of seconds during a quick sequence, but would be very disappointing to live with. This man would be happy about his makeover and we would leave the scene as more experienced, well-rounded students with an insight into TV production. Story 3. I was on an episode of Wife Swap. One of the wives was a dancer, so her new husband had to MC a variety show of which she was the headliner. I was the juggler in that act. Full disclosure, I'm pretty sure all the tape with me on it is in the room. Anywho, pretty fake. The people are real and lots of their interactions are real, but a ton of scenarios are staged. Okay, now we're going to plan the show, but make sure Wally, new husband, takes over. He'd never done anything showbiz before, so naturally we try to help him. But the director kept telling us that he was in charge and he needed to be doing the planning. I caught a moment of a personal interview as well, honest answers, but very much being steered by the camera crew and director. During the show, the crew said they needed to get sound levels, so they had people sit quietly, clap politely, clap loudly, etc. I'm fairly certain that was so they could have clips showing a range of responses. In the end, the whole show got about 4 seconds of time on screen. Waste of 2 days, no pay. Story 4. This probably doesn't count, but I interviewed for What Not to Wear. It started at a punk show on the West Coast. On the East Coast, you dress punk for a punk show. I just moved to the West Coast and didn't get the memo that everyone else would be wearing a plaid shirt and jeans, so I was in full-on regalia. So this woman approaches me and says she likes my outfit and that she works for a fashion show that she'd like me to be in, and asks for my contact info so she can follow up afterwards. Later on, I got an email from her and found out it was for What Not to Wear. Obviously, this made me feel completely awful since I felt like my outfit looked pretty nice. I contemplated a lot internally about whether or not I should enter. They told me I would get a prize of my choosing worth $20,000, plus an entire new wardrobe of fashion designer clothing. But the trade-off is that it would be really degrading and probably ruin my self-esteem. Plus, they would throw all of my alternative clothing. They said I would have to get all of my friends and family on board so they could have interventions to tell me how bad all my clothes are. Eventually, I decided money is money and went into the audition, which was in the SAG building. I also decided I was going to hide all my favorite clothes so they couldn't destroy them. A filmographer was asking me some questions when the director walked in and dragged him out of the room. She came back a minute later and told me she thought my outfit looked great, that she had no idea how I ended up there, but that I was welcome to recommend any other poorly dressed friends to the show. I guess in the end it was a confidence boost, but the $20,000 prize would have been pretty sweet. Story 5. I worked on a couple of low-key reality shows a while ago, and this is what I learned from the people who worked on other shows. So, each show has a team of what we call story producers who stand behind the cameraman with walkies telling them to get specific shots. As a reality is happening, the story producers are there to make sure they're getting the shots they need to make whatever story for the episode. Now, it's really hard to make something that didn't happen, but it's not too hard to change an emotion or a mood within what happened. Like when a woman doesn't like seeing the guy kiss the other woman, just use some out-of-context shots and there you have it. Well, see, everything that people say on a show is what they said, but sentences can be taken out of context. Sometimes, if the editor is good, they can frankenbite, which means they can take specific words to make a new sentence. This is rare because it's pretty hard to do and you have to find a place to put it, usually off-camera and subtitled. Producers will often talk badly in private interviews to get reactions. Did you hear that so-and-so said this about you? Drinks also help fuel drama, and they cast people who are going to be dramatic anyway. Producers will also select people to be on the show, like Pawn Stars. The producers select which customers get to be on the show. With Hardcore Pawn, it's the same thing, but more for a dramatic event rather than someone who has something interesting. When it comes to makeover shows, it varies. You could either have a Pimp My Ride, which did cosmetic fixes to cars, or an Overhaulin', where they did a full resto mod on the car. It just depends on the show. However, if it's a game show or any show where you win money, the federal government sends a rep to make sure the game is fair. There's laws against rigged game shows. Story 6. I shortly worked on Cajun Pawn Stars, the southern spin-off of Pawn Stars. I can't speak for how the other shows do it, but as far as I know, the same production company that takes the original Pawn Stars was also responsible for the spin-off, so I don't imagine the methods are too different. The items are real. I saw some really fascinating stuff brought in by genuinely excited, normal people. The deals, however, were fiction. I watched them take multiple endings on several occasions. The seller would be told to reach a certain number or aim for no deal at all, and then they'd improvise a negotiation scene over the course of the take. The director would then have them repeat this process with various end results to give them options in editing. It was exactly as awkward to watch as you'd expect, and I'm not sure I ever saw the shop actually buy anything off-screen or on. There was also a guy that worked at the shop that the show portrayed as a stereotypical backwoods idiot for comic relief. The guy was actually pretty articulate and genuinely nice, and he was essentially just acting. That show lasted about 3 seasons before it got canned, and last I heard, the shop owed the city over $100,000 for a nonsensical lawsuit they filed after the show got canceled. None of the locals I met had anything good to say about the shop staff, so I'm not too surprised. Story 7. Not sure if this qualifies as a reality TV show, but here goes. The show is called Restaurant Takeover. I believe it is restaurants only in Canada, but may be confined to a smaller area. The premise of the show is like kitchen nightmares, only more rubbish. Failing restaurant, not enough business, family run, decor is blah, food is mediocre, etc. Celebrity chef, along with an interior designer and contractor, comes in and they check the place out, including the food. They proceed to fix the place in terms of the menu and the interior-exterior aesthetic. Owners are happy. The end. I worked as a cook for 8 years, and a chef of mine called up to see if I needed some extra cash, which I did. Without even asking about it, I agreed to it, and then he explained. Instant regrets. Most cooks and chefs try to stray away from selling out as soon as possible. The majority hate the idea of celebrity chefs, with a few exceptions. The episode I worked on had a celebrity chef picked already, and I was just the one to prepare everything that was to be shown and filmed. I was never actually on film. I was never even credited. I was even paid late. They said it would be about 2 weeks' check in the mail and ended up being 3, plus they asked for a branch checking info to do a direct deposit. The celebrity chef didn't do anything to help me. He spent most of his time, honestly, having makeup redone and flirting with the ladies on set, owner of the restaurant included. Anyways, all the food on the episode was prepared by me, and even then only to a point where it looked correct. No need to taste anything. I didn't even have to salt and pepper. Worst part is half the stuff I prepped wasn't even used. It was annoying because you would think it was easy since they didn't care about the actual flavor of the food, only the looks. They were giving me ridiculous time constraints because they were rushing filming and were doing things so haphazardly. I don't want to ramble on, but it just makes everything on these kinds of shows seem fake. I should have never done it. Being a passionate cook and then doing this filming bull just drains the soul ever so slightly. This was my run-in with food and television. I hope OP still enjoys cooking, though. Shame they didn't credit him. He totally deserved it, but that might have ruined their realism for the show. Who knows? Story 8. I'm way too late on this, so I doubt many people will see it, but I went on the doctor's show after my whole man with no gluteal cleft story went viral. See my top post history for more info. I got a call from CBS a couple of days after everything went down, and they asked me to come out to California for their What the Health segment. Everything on the actual set was real, essentially just an interview, but the little montage backstory beforehand was completely set up and fake. They rented a house to pretend it was mine. They asked me to act like I was in more pain than I really was. I had to walk around the pool that I don't own and reflect on my own difficult life. It was super awkward for someone with zero acting experience, but it was also a ton of fun. They flew my wife and I out for free, put us up in the Roosevelt Hotel, and gave us a certain spending amount every day for reimbursement. They didn't pay me anything, but they did reimburse me for lost wages from work since I had to be out there for a few days. All in all, it was really cool because I essentially got a free vacation for my wife and I, all expenses paid. Plus, we got to go on a legit television set, which was pretty cool too. Story 9. I was on a reality show in the early 2000s that focused on Generation Xers dealing with unemployment during the recession. The producers edited out all mentions of my degrees, work experience, and professional licensing. They claimed I drove a luxury vehicle to the taping when in fact, I didn't even own a car, and I used public transportation. My small studio apartment was described as a luxury loft. They made me change out my street clothes and into a designer outfit that cost more than 2 years of rent, complete with Chloe handbag and dramatic diamond jewelry. They used binder clips along the back seams of our clothing to make it look custom tailored. Several panelists were full-time students or graduate students who lost their jobs, but the producers edited out all mention of academic and made it sound as though no one was engaged in any time of schooling or job training. They asked us a lot of pointed questions about whether we were respectful to our bosses, stole from our companies, lied on our resumes, fabricated degrees, cheated on licensing exams, or quit for unemployment benefits. We were a bunch of 20 and 30-something professionals pushing through a rough economy to the best of our abilities. They edited us to sound like whiny babies who were about to cry at the prospect of not vacationing in the Maldives that season. So, yeah, pretty fake. Story 10. Okay, I haven't seen anything on Bar Rescue yet, so I thought I'd chime in. Obligatory, this'll probably get buried, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, Bar Rescue is, I'm not sure if it's still on, a show about John Taffer, legendary bar extraordinaire who goes into divey and doom bars and reinvents them for the better. I was absolutely obsessed with this show for a long time. Turns out, as is almost always the case with reality TV, it was fake. I attended the bar rescue of a once frequent haunt of mine. The bar in question prior to the show was not in jeopardy. In fact, they were cheap and near a college campus, so they stayed busy regularly. We, the regulars, all knew this was just a fun gimmick for publicity and were excited about it. It was a freak show disaster of hilarity. First off, they forced my friend, the owner of the bar, to feign being uncontrollable intoxicated to make it seem like he was drinking away their money. He told us that they basically instructed him to just show up really hammered to every taping. On the night of their quote-unquote soft opening, when they first came and tried and implemented their awesome ideas only to have them fail, they had closed up 90% of the bar beverage-wise and were only serving 4 or 5 different John Taffer-approved cocktails. The drinks were all bad. The special celeb bartender that's there to whip the bad bartenders into shape kind of just paced uselessly back and forth behind the bar, yelling things like, "Come on, we can do better, let's go." And whenever they saw an empty drink, regardless of how long that drink had been empty, would make a huge scene of how long that person had been waiting for their drink. Oh, John Taffer, you might ask. Barely saw him. He wasn't there, really. He was absent most of the time and would suddenly burst in through the front door from some hidden place and start screaming about something totally unrelated to whatever was going on. It was all for show. He made no sense about 99% of the time. At one point, a cameraman had discarded an empty water bottle in the bar top in front of me, and John randomly picked it up and started screaming about what an unclean bar it was and how lazy the very frantic and hardworking bartenders were. It was hilarious. In the end, the bar wasn't really made over at all. The walls were painted this really awful color. The super sick hookah lounge Old Johnny set up in the back patio became a great place to do substances, and they ended up painting over all the ugly portraits they put up. The show also ended up renaming the bar to something really stupid. It still makes me chuckle to this day. Story 11. I was on Hardcore Pawn in 2011. A friend of mine told me they had sweet deals on used home theater systems, and I was looking for a receiver for my new Onkyo 5.1 speakers I had intoxicatedly purchased on Amazon the night prior. This is how I usually make all of my expensive purchases. So we arrived on a brisk February afternoon, the parking lot filled to the brim with cars, so I had to park in the back. There was an extremely long line of people going out the door. I learned that this line was for people trying to pawn and sell items. There was another entrance for showroom customers. As my friend and I approached the entrance, some guy went mad out of the exit for the showroom, and I swear to Christ, this guy is on a different level and he is making a beeline for me. As this gentleman is full chat approaching my friend, I notice a camera crew off to the side on intercept. It's about to go down. "Those guys, they just want to take your stuff. They won't give you anything and will act like your stuff is garbage." This guy is tripping out, eyes bugging out of his head, spitting when he is talking. As his rant came to an end, a microphone bone made its way down to my face, and I responded calmly and concisely. "I just came here to buy stuff," I said. Then I casually walked past a malfunctioning human being and entered the showroom. As I shopped through their stereo aisle, I was met by a chuckling producer. "I need you to sign a consent form. That moment outside was way too funny." I gladly signed my form. They took a photo of me holding a number, and I convinced the guy running the home theater section to sell me a cool Sony 5.1 receiver for like $75 that was practically brand new. 10 out of 10? Yeah, would definitely do it again. Story 12. My sister Julie was on The Real World. Me and my entire family went down to visit her. Everyone in the cast knows they better create drama or they won't get lots of airtime. My sister had a really unique storyline as she was Mormon. We were all Mormon. Julie was really excited for us to come down, but she also gave the show a ton of footage of her being annoyed we were coming, setting the stage. When we got down there, she started venting issues and even picked a big argument with my dad. I remember sitting on the couch thinking, what is she talking about? It was really funny. When our family was leaving, the producers begged us to stay and offered us money. When the show aired, my family had like 4 episodes. Julie was by far the most successful cast member. These shows don't pay well, but she made a ton of money on her celebrity. Colleges paid her big money to come to the school and be a motivational speaker. Really, she just talked about the show. Oh, and no one in the family had any hard feelings about the arguments. We all knew it was a drama she made up for the camera, and it worked. What's funny is she told us about other dramas other cast members invented but never got airtime. Julie and I are not Mormon anymore, but not because of the show. Alright, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 13. I was on The Amazing Race. This was not filmed daily. I remember it was like every week as compared to what is shown on TV. And it was filmed months before airing, so you already know the winner but cannot tell anyone because of the non-disclosure agreement. Everything has to be in perfect order, like how you run from A to B, how you open the paper tasks, how you ask from people, etc. The only thing that's not scripted are the people we choose to ask randomly to complete the task. They're really just random people we meet on the street. But everything was like, okay, we will reshoot the part when you are climbing the tree, running in the subway, etc., because there was not much action, drama, sweat. Also, I felt cheated. I kind of felt that the producers had an apple of their eye who was destined to win the game even before the show started. The game was played fair in the beginning till mid-part, but during the final episodes, the favorite team are getting all the special treatment they would get in order to be an advantage. Since your team is being taken at a different location than the other team, you wouldn't know what kind of cheating could have happened. Yes, you got it right, the producer's favorite won the race, and I felt cheated and used for the sake that they have contestants or drama or whatever. There are real contestants like me who auditioned from scratch, and there are lucky ones who are close to some big guy and got in the show and are set up to win. So if you are joining these sorts of reality shows, prepare for this reality. Story 14. I have a friend of a friend of a friend that was in 16 and pregnant season 3. They heavily edit the show to always make the fathers look absolutely terrible and the mothers look like innocent, sacrificing maternal sweethearts. He had twins, and one of the big arguments between him and the mom was what the baby's last name should be. He said that he would be happy if she hyphenated it to include both their names, but she refused. And you would think, by watching the show, that he only wanted them to take his name. The climax of the whole episode was a scene in which he was driving the mother and the twins around in his car, and they started yelling at each other and that he was pulled over and had her out of the car. She screamed something about how he'd better bring her kids right now, and so after a few seconds, he pulled over and gave them to her, and then he sped off. What they didn't show is that she cheated on him again and had been throughout the pregnancy, and that when he confronted her about it in the car and they started yelling, she hurt him while he was driving with 2 newborns in the backseat, and that he had her out of the car down the street from her house, and that he didn't leave her or the baby's side until her mom's car was in sight. He's a really good, responsible guy, and since the episode aired, she's up and moved states with their sons and is hiding them from him, and he sees them maybe once a year if there's an extraordinary miracle. Yeah, in all seriousness, this seems like it should be pretty much against the law, right? Some kind of cyber libel or some kind of thing like that. Story 15. I worked on the show, American Pickers. For the most part of the show, it is real. They have people email the show and say they have a bunch of items, and then they filter out where they want to go. Then they drive to the location and actually pick through it. They are also both real pickers and were doing their thing long before the show started. The fake part of the show is everything else. We would do about 3 to 4 takes of the goodbyes, 3 to 4 takes of them driving into the lot. After that, everyone would pull back in. Mike and Frank would hop into a van and off they went to the airport, while people like myself would drive the RV and their work van to the next location. Mike is eccentric and off the wall with energy, but he's really nice. Frank is a total diva and tends to be angry. One episode we were on, he started screaming at the production for attempting to leave just a little bit early. But then a few days later, he was changing in the RV while I was getting ready to drive it to the next location, and he had somewhat of a heart-to-heart, telling me how he was sick of how production always treated their items and didn't really respect their profession. It's always rush, 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 and he missed when they didn't have the show. So maybe he was just tired of it, but then again, he's still doing episodes almost 10 years later. Story 16. I was involved with an episode of Bar Rescue, in fact, the highest rated episode to date, last I heard, and it is completely fake. Production is much more about constructing a story that the viewer can feel superior about when watching than it is about rescuing bars. The story must have an arc, so they will work with the bar in question to intentionally amplify the problems. Producers ask staff and owners to intentionally behave improperly, or they will fudge details about health and safety. The work that is done for the bar involves minimal real fixes. You know how in Pimp My Ride they never touch engine problems? Similar here. They only touch stuff that looks good on camera. Construction changes aren't to do things like repair the foundation or the structure. They are to put up paneling or slap on some paint. That's it. As far as actual stuff you are given, they only give you stuff that was given to them by companies trying to get TV exposure. This is why they're always careful to mention or show the brand name of the product being installed. When you see that tiny line in the credits about promotional considerations provided in part by, those are companies that are giving stuff and possibly money in addition in order to get television exposure. Our episode involved luxury ice spheres that cost over $5 per unit and automatic beer dispensers that were not legal to use in that county. So any customer shown using it was fake and everything dispensed could not be charged for. I presume the show covered the costs of food and drink, but still, it means another day without profit for the establishment. Those quote-unquote grand reopenings are only populated by friends and family of the production crew, by the way. They will straight up lie about things. In the episode in question, they talked about how much business was in the area around the bar when they showed a map with all of these big office buildings marked off on it. Yeah, well, 2 of those buildings were vacant and 1 was just a parking garage. They don't discuss the real problems. Our bar had a bad AC, a bad fridge, and it was affected hard by the Great Recession. Most small businesses were. They fixed neither. Instead, they spent time making fun of the bar's theme and said the owners and staff were just being children acting out their fantasies. If you watch the show and haven't guessed, this is the Pirate Bar episode. They said acting like pirates wasn't profitable. This makes zero sense because medieval times is massively successful and just a few miles away. We had the second largest Renaissance festival in the US, which is fantastically profitable. There was no interest in doing research on this. The plan was to completely renovate the place from the start. And the idea they had for a new theme was just the laziest thing I've ever heard of. There are lots of businesses here, let's make a corporate-themed restaurant. If I'm going to lunch or out for drinks for a day of being all businessy, I don't want to go to a bar that is themed after the abstract concept of the corporation. I either want to go someplace relaxed or someplace that is genuinely executive. But what the viewers got at the end was a great narrative. They can shout at their TV, "You shouldn't be rude to customers like that," and "Why would anyone want to eat crummy food like that?" The chef fed John the dare item on the menu that's so spicy that you have to sign a waiver. But he didn't warn Taffer because the chef was getting angry at him. And, wow, the show gave them all this free stuff and then just gave up on the new theme? I'm going to go online and rage about this and everyone will be saying the same thing and we will feel glad that we all agree with each other. Reality TV is just about taking a bunch of footage, doing everything as cheap as possible, getting lots of product placement, and then going to the editing room and crafting a story that fits into the time slot and makes the viewer think they learned something, all while getting to watch some juicy drama and conflict. You get the people involved to do whatever you need them to do to tell this story by threatening that if they don't, the show will never air. And the people involved are really depending on that exposure. They either want their business to grow, or they want to move on to being fake celebrities, or propel an acting or music career. So they dance like marionettes to the producers' ideas. Story 17. I was on Extreme Makeover, Home Edition. All of the staff on that show, from the producers to the sound techs, are some of the most wonderful people I have ever met. It's clear from the start when you hear Ty yelling out in the front yard and your home is instantly filled with cameras and staff that they have the family's best interests in mind. To put into perspective how much they care, my family and I went to another build just to see what goes on behind the scenes. You don't get to see a lot of it because you're out on vacation. When we went, we expected nobody to remember us and to have to remind everyone who we were. When we got there, though, we were instantly greeted by the crew. They remembered all of our names and everything about us. Most notably, though, was that Paul DeMeo, Paulie, saw us standing around and watching while he was walking from one scene to another. Without hesitation, as soon as he saw us, he yelled from across the set, "It's the Emehanan family," and ran over to talk to us. With producers and crew actually sort of getting mad at him because he was holding up the schedule, he stayed and talked to us for around an hour and then finally had to go. He came back though, took off his trademark yellow fire hat and put it right on my brother's head. This meant that every incomplete take that he had done with the hat on, he would have to do again so they would have consistency for the editing. Later, when my brother wanted to get it signed, he told us to come to the hotel he was staying at so that he could sign it. Several members of the crew had worked on a lot of different shows but kept coming back to that one because they liked it so much. I have so many stories of the wonderful things that they did for us, from a producer making a fool of himself acting out The Little Mermaid to entertain my brother, to the sound guys cracking jokes with us to lighten the mood. There's not enough space here to tell them all. A lot of people say that Ty was a schmuck or was never around. He was actually a really nice guy. He just always did 2 episodes at a time, sometimes states apart. So he would sometimes have to do a morning shoot on one set and then have to immediately leave to fly across the country to do an afternoon shoot on another set. Even though he was so stressed, he still took some time out to talk to everyone in my family. The people who worked that show, from the cast to the crew to the execs, actually cared about what they did and really wanted to make a difference in the lives of the people they helped. It's easy for people to make assumptions from the outside, and this probably won't stop them. but I have a hard time standing by and watching as a bunch of people pick the show apart without knowing anything about it, assuming that it's just another way to make money for the people involved. And before you ask, yes, you really don't know if you're going to be picked. Without the surprise, they wouldn't get all the raw emotion that they get at the beginning, and that's what they strive for. You are given a day that they might come, and that's it. The families have mics on in the good morning scenes because they take it multiple times and mic the family after the first one. If you watch closely, you'll notice that the family will be mic'd up on the takes where they are running around, but not on any shots where they are smiling or crying. That's because they use the extra take for the movement and less exciting stuff, but keep the first shot for all the emotion. Story 18. MasterChef, application and audition experience. One day, I received a random online application for MasterChef. I don't cook, but I'm bored, so I filled it out. I was very sarcastic but truthful with my answers. I knew I'd never get on that show, but I would love to learn to cook. One of the questions was, if we were to come over to your house, what would you cook us? I said anything that can be cooked with a number being pressed into the microwave. But then I would explain why. After I filled out the application, I sent in a nice pic of myself and my kids. That night, I received an email from an LA casting director who said I got a VIP entry into the Boston auditions the next morning. And I'm like, what? Is this a joke? How could they pick me? Did they even read my application? On their email, they told me what to bring to the audition, your favorite meal, and played it at the audition. Hello, I mentioned that I don't know how to cook on my application. I don't cook. How can I prepare? Okay, I think they must want me for that person who gets yelled at, then moved off the show. They must have read my sarcastic application and seeing I don't know anything, they're still asking me to come in. That's the only thing I can do. I need to get out of the house anyway, so why not? So, what's my favorite meal? Oh, I know, cereal. My partner was like, no way, you can't bring cereal. I said, why not? It is a meal. I like combining different cereals in one bowl for a full flavored breakfast. Those are ingredients which make a bowl of cereal. I also like to chop things so they can see my talent there. It won't be the cooking. I get fresh strawberries and blueberries, picking the best ones as presentation is everything. Again, it won't be the cooking. I put them in containers, milk in a container, best silverware, nicest bowl, and of course I get a smattering of my favorite cereal combinations. I also went to a store and grabbed some cute marzipan to put on the plate that the bowl will be sitting on. Cheap candied marzipan for accent on the plate, so I head out. I get to the audition with a line around the building, but I walk straight in with my VIP name. I went to a desk, I'm asked my name and the name of the dish, blah blah blah, and my dish is cereal. Excuse me, she says. Cereal? I tell her with confidence, cereal. She mumbles and writes my name on the top of the tag, and underneath it, she writes cereal. I thank her, took the paper off the back of the name tag and slapped it on my shirt. I then proceed to the area I'm told to go, and I end up in a small line of applicants. I get settled in. There are obviously judges hanging outside of the room we are going to. They aren't far from me. I take in the others. They have hot bags or something. I had a paper bag. They all had fancy dish names on their name tags. The gentleman in front of me starts small talk, then his eyes get bigger. You have cereal? So I took the moment and explained loudly so the judges could hear why I chose cereal. Because with each minute ticking by from the minute I walked into the doors, I knew I was going to fail, so I was just trying to explain it to the judges in an indirect way before I walked into the fire with no time for explanations once I was in. Then the lady says, you are the first 10, come in. We go into a room where long tables are in a horseshoe configuration, and we're all nicely spread out. She introduces herself as a casting director. Thank God it's the same one who replied to me because she knows I'm going to be the loser who gets moved off quickly. She read my resume. She knows I'm smarter than this and would never make fun of this show by showing up with a bowl of cereal. So they go around the room and ask why you are here, why do you want to be a chef, and from where she started, I will be the last person to answer. I will have to listen to sob stories, how people have lost but prevailed, and my mind is racing. Oh no, I think. I don't have a sob story. You know they want a sob story or you're out. Stop. Get a grip. She read your resume. She knows who you are, what you'll be cast for. But what if she doesn't know who I am? I will be a random person showing up with cereal, a VIP person with cereal. I don't think she knows. Oh my God, she knows. The guy next to me, a recovering substance user. Of course he is. Just before they get to me, who has cereal and no sob story. Hi, what's your name, your dish, and why you want to be a master chef? She says to me with that fake smile, Hi, I'm blah. I have cereal and I want to learn how to cook. I figured Chef Ramsay could help with that. I almost winked at her, but her eyes were so-so, her face changed. I knew she didn't know me. My clothes were shrinking on my body. Oh, the humiliation. She was like, "Oh my God, did you just say cereal?" "Yes," I murmur. She just whips away from me to address the room with next steps. "You have 3 minutes to plate your food, then the judges will come around." I snapped out of my self-pity and stood tall for my cereal dish. Go! Needless to say, I almost didn't finish plating my food. Too many containers, no time to do the strawberries on my board. So I used open containers, throwing everything together, almost forgetting the milk. The first judge came by. He used my one spoon. Oops, this will be a problem. He stands in front of me. Cereal? Yes, yes, I have the raisin bran for more sweet, grounding taste. What? The granola for texture and taste, and the Lucky Charms for sweetness and texture, and the fruits for this reason, etc., etc. And he takes a bite. He said it's actually good. See, I know, thank you. He also said Chef Ramsay would be angry. See, I know that too, I repeated. I told him I knew that and it will make a couple of good first episodes. He smiled and walked off. I thought, well, he understands me in the big picture. Just having one person understand my willingness to show up with cereal will make this whole experience worth it. The next judge was older and I could tell a very seasoned chef. I just let out a sigh when I saw him coming. I almost wanted to say, you don't have to eat this. But I didn't, and I gave him the explanation of my dish. He was disgusted. He even went to get a piece of the marzipan with the edge of his spoon. It was so stale it almost went across the room. I smiled a weak smile. The third judge was some LA arrogant chef. Why bother? He came prancing over. He looked at my dish and said, "Is this a joke?" I said, "You might want to talk to your casting director about that." I didn't even give him the speech. He was already digging into the cereal. He took a bite. "There's not enough milk." I reply, "Well, there is. You might get more milk if you weren't eating it with a fork." He glared at me and walked off. Then we got the, "Thank you, we'll be in touch." I knew I was out. How could I have been thinking that she had me come in to be the one to get moved off? Silly me. In the end, I don't think she read my lengthy sarcastic application. I think she went by the picture that all American moms look like because I don't have a sob story and I don't know how to cook. I'm still glad I did it. Who cares? I mean, who cares in the long run? I did walk away with the recovering substance user dish, which was basically hot dog and beans. I told him my boys would love it. And if you loved any one of these stories, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video, and thanks for hanging with me on this one.